Here's a number that should bother you: 1.8 million. That's how many Canadian seniors currently depend on a payment called the Guaranteed Income Supplement. And every single July, without a phone call, without a letter, without any warning at all, a chunk of that 1.8 million, watch it disappear. Not reduced, not delayed, gone. 1 month, there's just over $1,000 sitting in the account, same as always. The next month, nothing. And for a lot of these people, that money isn't extra. It's the rent. It's groceries. It's the difference between getting through the month and not. Here's what makes this so infuriating. Almost none of them did anything wrong. They just tripped over a rule nobody ever explained to them. And today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how that trap works, and more importantly, exactly how to stay out of it, or climb out if you're already in it. Let's start with the machine itself, because once you understand it, everything else clicks into place. Most people assume their government benefits just renew automatically, quietly, year after year. The GIS doesn't work that way. It's income tested, meaning what you receive, or whether you receive anything at all, is tied directly to how much money you reported making. And Service Canada checks that number once a year, using one source, your tax return. But here's the twist almost nobody knows. The GIS doesn't run on a calendar year. It runs July to June. So the payment landing in your account this coming July isn't based on this year's income. It's based on what you reported on last year's tax return. A full year later, the number from your old return quietly comes back to decide your fate. And the math is brutal. For a single senior, the maximum GIS is roughly $1,100 a month, but only if your other income is very low. Past that, for roughly every $2 you earn elsewhere, you lose about $1 of GIS. That's a 50% clawback, and the whole thing disappears entirely once your income crosses somewhere around $22,500 a year for a single person. That is an extremely narrow window. We're not talking about wealthy retirees losing a bonus. We're talking about someone whose income ticks up by a couple $1,000s. One good year, one unexpected withdrawal. And suddenly they're sliding down that slope, sometimes right off the edge of it. So now that you understand the machine, let's go through the actual reasons it swings the axe, starting with the mildest and ending with the one that catches the most people every single year. The first and gentlest reason, your income simply went up. A modest raise, a bit more interest income, a small pension bump. Doesn't take much. Because of that 50% clawback, even a small increase quietly shaves down your July payment. Most people never even connect the dots. They just notice a smaller number and assume it's a mistake. It isn't. The system is doing exactly what it was built to do. The next reason is the one that feels genuinely unfair: a one-time lump sum. This is where good, careful people get blindsided. The system doesn't care if a chunk of income was a one-off. It doesn't distinguish between a raise and a windfall. So if you pulled extra money from your RRIF to cover a major repair, sold some shares, received severance, or got an inheritance, that entire amount gets treated as if it were your new normal income. And it can wipe out a full year of GIS, even though the money's already spent and gone. A furnace isn't a salary. But to the computer running these calculations, it looks identical. Third, a change in your marital status. The GIS looks at your household, not just you individually. Lose a spouse, separate, or move in with a new partner, and your whole calculation resets under different thresholds. Often this hits at the worst possible moment. Someone grieving a spouse suddenly finds their supplement recalculated on top of everything else they're dealing with. One small silver lining buried in here. If you're between 60 and 64 and your spouse receives GIS or has passed away, there are related benefits, the allowance and the allowance for the survivor, that thousands of eligible people never even apply for. Fourth, your spouse's income, not yours. If you're part of a couple, GIS is calculated on your combined income. So even if you didn't earn a single extra dollar, if your spouse's income rose, a new pension, some part-time work, a withdrawal from their own savings, your payment can drop because of it. Couples often don't realize they need to plan withdrawals together because the system already treats their finances as one shared pool, whether they've thought about it that way or not. And now, the number one reason, the one responsible for more lost payments than everything else combined, and honestly, the most heartbreaking because it's the easiest one to avoid: not filing your taxes. The GIS only renews automatically if you file your tax return on time, every year, by April 30th. It doesn't matter if you earned nothing. It doesn't matter if you've received the GIS for a decade straight with zero changes. No return means no data for Service Canada to calculate against, and no data means the payment simply stops. Getting it switched back on after that isn't instant either. You file, you wait for processing, and only then does it resume. For someone living paycheck to paycheck, that gap can stretch into a genuine crisis. And the cruelest part of this particular trap, The people most likely to fall into it are the lowest income seniors, the ones who think, I barely made anything this year, why would I need to file? That logic feels completely reasonable, and it's exactly what shuts the payment off. Let me put a real situation in front of you because numbers are easy to forget, but stories stick. A retired woman, we'll call her Margaret, spent decades working before settling into retirement on a modest income, with GIS covering a meaningful chunk of her monthly budget. One year, her furnace failed in the middle of winter. She did the responsible thing and pulled extra money from her RRIF to replace it. Sensible, necessary, exactly what any of us would do. That withdrawal showed up on her tax return as income. The following July, with zero warning, her GIS payment simply stopped. She assumed it was a banking error. She called her bank. Nothing wrong there. She spent almost 2 weeks confused and anxious, going through paperwork trying to figure out what she'd done wrong, until she finally learned the truth. A one-time furnace repair had been read by the system as if she'd received a permanent raise. She hadn't made a mistake. The system just wasn't built to tell the difference between emergency spending and a salary increase. So here's how you protect yourself, and here's how Margaret eventually got her payment back. Step 1, and it's non-negotiable. File your tax return every single year, on time, even if your income is zero. This alone prevents the most common cause of lost GIS. If filing feels intimidating or costly, it doesn't have to be. Free tax clinics run through the CRA's Community Volunteer Program operate every spring in libraries and community centers across the country, and trained volunteers will complete your return for you at no cost. Step 2 is the part almost nobody knows exists, and it's what actually saved Margaret. If your income has dropped or you know it's about to, you don't have to sit and wait out a full year on the old higher number. You can contact Service Canada directly and request that your GIS be recalculated based on your current estimated income instead of last year's tax return. This provision exists specifically for people whose income fell due to retirement, the loss of a pension, or, unlike Margaret, a one-time lump sum that threw off an otherwise normal year. The exact language matters here. Tell them, my income has decreased since the tax year you're using, and I'd like my guaranteed income supplement reassessed based on my current estimated income. That single request is what turned Margaret's payment back on. Once Service Canada understood the RRIF withdrawal was a one-time event and her real ongoing income was low, her full payment was restored. Step 3 is about staying ahead of the problem entirely. If you know a large one-time amount is coming, a big RRIF withdrawal, selling property, cashing out an investment, think about the GIS impact before you act, not after. Sometimes spreading a withdrawal across 2 calendar years instead of 1 keeps you under the threshold. And there's one especially useful tool most people overlook. Withdrawals from a tax-free savings account do not count as income for GIS purposes at all. They're completely invisible to the calculation, so a senior who covers an emergency expense from their TFSA instead of their RRIF keeps their entire supplement intact. Same expense, same amount of money spent, completely different outcome, just based on which account it came from. And if your payment has already stopped, don't assume it's gone for good. File any outstanding tax returns immediately. Then call Service Canada and do 2 things in that same call. Ask them to reinstate your payment now that your return is filed, and if your real income is genuinely low, request that current income reassessment. In many cases, the payment isn't just restored, it's backdated, meaning you could be owed everything you missed. The seniors who get that money back are the ones who make the call. The ones who assume it's permanent are the ones who never try. So here's the whole thing in one breath. Your GIS gets silently recalculated every July based on last year's tax return. It can shrink or stop because your income rose, because of a one-time lump sum, because your marital status changed, because of your spouse's income, or most often because a tax return simply wasn't filed. File every year without exception. If your income drops, ask for a reassessment. And plan big withdrawals around the GIS, not into it. The people who lose this benefit aren't careless. They're decent people who were never told how the machinery actually works. Now you know more than most seniors in this country will ever be told. If someone you love depends on this payment, send them this video. It might be the thing that saves their July.